What's going on, everybody? This is Afro Think Tank. So Howard Lutnick, one of Donald Trump's stooges, best friends, and confidants, all right, the Commerce Secretary, he's testifying at the Senate about his relationship and his closeness with Jeffrey Epstein. Let me tell you something. If guilty was a person, it'd be this guy. Every word that comes out of his mouth says he's guilty. You can see it in his face. You can feel he knows he's guilty. I mean, you could just, nothing that comes out of this dude's mouth sounds anything like the truth. Apparently, this guy takes his wife and his children around Jeffrey Epstein all the time. Apparently, that's a normal thing. Like, he can't get his story straight. He done got caught lying. And I don't think this dude, I know he pissed in his pants. I know he did. I know he pissed in his pants. And we need to put more people on that list in front of the Congress to answer for it. Not just Congress, but in front of a federal court, in front of a criminal court. Because we need accountability. Straight up. But anyway, I'm going to put this information here because we're not going to let this Epstein thing go. All right, we're not. We're going to talk about this shit. All right, it needs to happen. Everybody needs to be exposed. Everybody. And no amount of time, no amount of flooding the zone, no amount of throwing shit at the wall to see what sticks, nothing. No word salad. Nothing is going to stop us from getting to these files. Nothing. Anyway, that's all I got to say. It's Afro Think Tank. Learn some detail. I'm out.
Howard Lutnick knew Jeffrey Epstein was evil. I'm just going to read you some of what Howard Lutnick said in his own words. He called Jeffrey Epstein the greatest blackmailer ever. He said that when he and his wife visited Epstein's house, Epstein showed him a space to, quote, get a massage. Lutnick said they get a massage. That's what his MO was. Get a massage, get a massage. And I assume that was on video. This guy was the greatest blackmailer ever, blackmailed people. That's how he had money. And then he gets weirdly close to me, and Epstein says, and the right kind of massage. This then caused Lutnick to say to the American people in an interview, quote, we'll never be in the room with that disgusting person ever again. Well, guess what? The Epstein files new release shows that not only did Howard Lutnick lie to American people, he went into business with Jeffrey Epstein. He visited Epstein Island. And Howard Lutnick did this knowing how evil Epstein was. Lutnick also lied to American people. And really the real reason he should resign, he's just like one of the most politically stupidest cabinet members I've ever seen. He knew this stuff was in the Epstein files. And yet he goes and gives an interview where he makes up these lies knowing it's going to come back and hurt him. So he just got to resign for all those reasons.
Why did the Epstein files show you coordinating a meeting and planning a visit with Jeffrey Epstein on his private island in December 2012?
Thank you for the question. I'm glad to be here to make it clear that I met Jeffrey Epstein when I moved to a house next door to him in New York, right? And I met him then. Over the next 14 years, I met him 2 other times that I can recall. 2 times. And that is none for 6 years. So 6 years later, I met him. And then a year and a half after that, I met him, and never again. Probably the total, and you've seen all of these documents, of these millions and millions of documents, there may be 10 emails connecting me with him, probably about 10 emails connecting me with him over a 14-year period. I did not have any relationship with him. I barely had anything to do with that person, okay?
Congressman, it's great to have you here. I first want to get your reaction to what we just heard in that clip from Secretary Lutnick related to his Epstein connections.
Well, Secretary Lutnick has been lying first to the public, so we should be very clear, and we should just look at his comments. Remember, Secretary Lutnick basically said that he had no contact with Jeffrey Epstein post-2005. He said that in an interview just months ago, which we've all probably seen many times now, and that is actually not true. I mean, not only was Commerce Secretary Lutnick, not only did he have this relationship, he apparently went into business with Jeffrey Epstein, or was trying to go into business with Epstein. And so he continues to lie to the American people. And I think the question that we all have is, why are so many people in the president's circle, Secretary Lutnick, former Labor Secretary Acosta, Elon Musk, Steve Bannon. Why are so many people in the president's orbit? Why do all arrows point back to this cover-up? Why are we protecting all of these people? And so I think the secretary, one, clearly had a relationship that he lied about. He should resign from his position or he should be fired. We should be very clear about that. And we're committed as oversight Democrats to ensuring that every person involved that has information about Epstein's crimes is held accountable.
Secretary Lutnick, I think you understand the root of concern here. It's the way you described very emphatically your first encounter with him in his apartment, said you were disgusted, would never have any contact with him again. Did you, in fact, make the visit to Jeffrey Epstein's private island?
I did have lunch with him as I was on a boat going across on a family vacation. My wife was with me, as were my 4 children and nannies. I had another couple they were there as well with their children, and we had lunch on the island. That is true, for an hour, and we left with all of my children, with my nannies and my wife, all together. We were on family vacation. We were not apart. To suggest there was anything untoward about that in 2012, I don't recall why we did it, but
Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick testifying on Capitol Hill this morning, and Lutnick telling lawmakers up on the Hill that, in fact, he did visit Epstein's island. Now, this coming after Lutnick had earlier suggested he broke off all contact with Jeffrey Epstein around 2005. Documents revealed in the Epstein files indicated that, in fact, he had a much more extensive relationship with Jeffrey Epstein after that point in time. And today he's admitting on Capitol Hill that he did go with his family to Jeffrey Epstein's island in 2012. Here's what he said just a few moments ago.
I did have lunch with him as I was on a boat going across on a family vacation. My wife was with me, as were my 4 children and nannies. I had another couple they were there as well with their children, and we had lunch on the island. That is true, for an hour, and we left with all of my children, with my nannies and my wife, all together. We were on family vacation. We were not apart. To suggest there was anything untoward about that in 2012.
So Lutnick saying that nothing inappropriate happened while he was on Jeffrey Epstein's island. Democrats pressing Lutnick, though, said they were concerned that Lutnick had misadvised the American people on exactly what his relationship was with Jeffrey Epstein in his public comments before those Epstein files became public last week. Guys, back over to you.
Of these millions and millions of documents, there may be 10 emails connecting me with him, probably about 10 emails connecting me with him over a 14-year period. I did not have any relationship with him. I barely had anything to do with that person, okay?
Secretary Lutnick, I think you understand the root of concern here. It's the way you described very emphatically your first encounter with him in his apartment, said you were disgusted, would never have any contact with him again. Did you, in fact, make the visit to Jeffrey Epstein's private island?
I did have lunch with him as I was on a boat going across on a family vacation. My wife was with me, as were my 4 children and nannies. I had another couple they were there as well with their children, and we had lunch on the island. That is true, for an hour, and we left with all of my children, with my nannies and my wife, all together. We were on family vacation. We were not apart. To suggest there was anything untoward about that in 2012, I don't recall why we did it, but
Mr. Secretary, again, as I said, there's the fact that you believe that you misled the country and the Congress based on your earlier statements, suggesting that you cut off all contact when, in fact, you had not. When you visited the private island, did you see anything inappropriate during that visit?
the only thing I saw with my wife and my children and the other couple and their children was staff who worked for Mr. Epstein on that island.
And you realize that, you know, this visit took place after he'd been convicted, right? I mean, you made a very big point of saying that you sensed that this was a bad person in 2005. And then, of course, in 2008, he was convicted of soliciting prostitution of a minor. And yet you went and had this trip and other interactions. Did you have a dinner in Epstein's New York City home in 2011?
No.
So the information that suggests that there was a dinner with Woody Allen and Woody Allen's spouse at the Epstein residence, that's there's nothing to that. Is that right?
I actually don't know what you're referring to. There was, look, I looked through the millions of documents for my name, just like everybody else. And what I found was there was a document that says that I had a meeting with him on in May, I think, for an hour at 5 o'clock.
Okay.
Not dinner or otherwise, for an hour at 5 o'clock.
All right.
We had lunch on the island. That is true, for an hour, and we left with all of my children, with my nannies and my wife, all together. We were on family vacation. We were not apart. To suggest there was anything untoward about that in 2012, I don't recall why we did it. Of these millions and millions of documents, there may be 10 emails connecting me with him. I barely had anything to do with that person. I literally met him 3 times over 14 years with widespread in between. I have done absolutely nothing wrong. I have nothing to hide, absolutely nothing.
Donald Trump's Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, has just been caught in a huge lie. And the lie is bigger than what was actually in the testimony today before Congress. Howard Lutnick said in a podcast on Force One back in 2025 that he had nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein after 2005. That he and his wife were at Jeffrey's, they lived next door in New York, that they had been there. There was a massage table in the room. They asked him about the massage table. Jeffrey says he likes lots of massages, and he said the special kind. Howard Lutnick and his wife said they discussed it. It was so disgusting they could never be associated with him, ever go back, blah, 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 blah. Well, fast forward to December 23rd of 2012, Howard Lutnick and his wife and the 4 children all have lunch on Epstein Island. What? Yes, they had lunch on Epstein Island. And that's not the last time they had involvement together. There are emails from 2011 discussing drinks and a meeting between Jeffrey Epstein and Howard Lutnick. There is a 2012 business deal between Jeffrey Epstein and Howard Lutnick for Adfin. I believe it was a marketing company that they signed a contract for. And there are additional emails and correspondence from 2015 to 2018 between the two. Clearly, they did not end their relationship in 2005, as Howard Lutnick said. Howard Lutnick has lied left and right. Is this a prerequisite to be in the Trump administration? I don't know. It seems so. But what do you think? Should Howard Lutnick resign? Should Trump fire him? I think he needs to resign at a minimum. Love to hear from my Democrats, my MAGAs, my crazies, my cuckoos, and my burned out light bulbs. Just one more member of the Trump team telling us lies, and he's caught red-handed.
People in power, whether they're in government, whether they're in finance, whether they're in technology, if they have been implicated in the files in morally embarrassing ways and in ways that shock the conscience, should be held accountable. And it should be regardless of party.
So you're calling for Howard Lutnick to resign?
I believe that Lutnick, at the very least, needs to be brought before Congress. I think, based on the evidence, he should be out of the cabinet. But, you know, I mean, people say, oh, you're just a Democrat saying that. No, I mean, look at what he is, how much influence he had with Epstein, and he wasn't transparent about it. But again, it's not about Lutnick, and it's not about any particular person. In this country, we have to make a decision. Are we going to allow rich and powerful people who were friends and had no problem doing business and showing up with a pedophile who was raping underage girls, are we just going to allow them to skate? Or like other countries, are we going to have elite accountability and have accountability for the people who did that? Most Americans believe we need accountability.
Howard Lutnick, the U.S. Secretary of Commerce, is a liar and a scumbag and has to resign immediately. 4 months ago, Howard Lutnick sat down in an interview and stated how he was neighbors with Jeffrey Epstein and had one encounter in 2005 in which he was so creeped out by, he, quote, never wanted to be around that man ever again. Then all of a sudden, we have an email exchange from 2012 after Jeffrey Epstein had already been convicted as a sex offender. And then on top of it, lists the children that would be heading to the island. Doesn't name names, lists their ages. Forget about that time when he was laughing after there was a question about what they were going to do about the Epstein case. Howard Lutnick lied to the American public about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, a known sex trafficker, had no issue lying to the public and then taking his kids to the island along with his wife. He lied to us all. When does it end, guys? I'm really sick of this. I'm sick of reading everything every single day about the powers that be are lying about being associated with sex traffickers, the most notorious one to ever walk this earth, and denying that they had a relationship with him, but yet they get to keep their job in the White House. Everyone should be insulted by this. This isn't bipartisan. This is humanity. Children were trafficked for years. He knew about it, and he lied about his relationship with it. Resign today.
Massage table in the middle of your house? How often do you have a massage? And he says, every day. And then he gets weirdly close to me.
Ooh.
And he says, and the right kind of massage.
Ooh.
Now my wife is standing here. So she looks at me and I look at her and we say, I'm sorry, we have to go. And we left. And in the 6 or 8 steps it takes to get from his house to my house, my wife and I decided that I will never be in the room with that disgusting person ever again.
Really?
So I was never in the room with him socially, for business, or even philanthropy. If that guy was there, I wasn't going because he's gross.
Oh.
And so I look back at it as a gift.
Yes.
He gave me a gift.
Yes.
Of avoid. And so, yeah, that's my story. A one and absolutely done.
Right.
I think you understand the root of concern here. It's the way you described very emphatically your first encounter with him in his apartment, said you were disgusted, would never have any contact with him again. Did you, in fact, make the visit to Jeffrey Epstein's private island?
I did have lunch with him as I was on a boat going across on a family vacation. My wife was with me, as were my 4 children and nannies. I had another couple they were there as well with their children, and we had lunch on the island. That is true, for an hour, and we left with all of my children, with my nannies and my wife, all together. We were on family vacation. We were not.
And you realize that, this visit took place after he'd been convicted, right? I mean, you made a very big point of saying that you sensed that this was a bad person in 2005. And then, of course, in 2008, he was convicted of soliciting prostitution of a minor. And yet you went and had this trip and other interactions. Did